And we're live.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Lisa.
Hey, Josh. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dark Ozarks. It's Wednesday.
It is. It is. We got some fun topics. It's been a bit of a week, but you know what? Here we are.
That's right. That just makes it more interesting.
That it does.
First of all, let's invite everybody to Newtonia on Saturday. We are doing an event at the Ritchie Mansion. Actually, three locations: the community center, the mansion, and the Civil War cemetery. Tickets are available on paranormalsciencelab.com, and you can get more details on the event listing on the page. So check it out. It's going to be fun, and it helps the house.
It does. Incredible location. And again, for me, and I don't think that I'm alone on this, many times have gone past these, locations that just innately know that they are historic.
They're historic, they're interesting.
And normally you can't get in.
Right.
And that's what a big part of what this night is about. Of course, it's Dark Ozarks, Paranormal Science Lab. There are absolutely paranormal aspects of this. And yes, the Ritchie Mansion is haunted.
Yeah.
But for people who might have reservations about, oh my gosh, it's going to be so scary. That's not what this is about at all.
No.
This is not a Halloween spook house at all. And everything that we do and everything that we talk about is grounded in history. It is grounded in reality. It is grounded in a monumental amount of respect for the properties themselves, as well as the people who've gone on before.
Exactly. And that's the main purpose, is to preserve that legacy. And so events like this for most historic sites are indispensable, because it's not the state or the federal government supporting them. So
absolutely. And there's something really beautiful about communities of people coming together and preserving our own history in our own backyards.
I agree. And being able to have an enjoyable evening at the same time.
Definitely. And what time does everything get started?
8 o'clock. 8 o'clock at the community center. It's scheduled for 3 hours. So we're actually going to be doing quite a bit in 3 hours. So, it's going to be fun.
This is our last night of just kind of not having notes, and excited about what all we're going to dig into tonight. But there is something associated with it. So I'm going to look like I'm going like totally off topic, but I'm not.
We also have one other housekeeping thing we have to do too, unless that's what you're getting.
Yes, we do. Well, we'll tie that in. I have my books. I'm looking to get more books. I'll wrap this all up, but it's associated with the Ritchie Mansion and many other locations, Civil War era locations in Missouri. And just talking about Missouri, touching on Missouri for a moment. Many people who know me personally know that I've been also a fan of Looney Tunes, but yes, a fan of Disney. And growing up, because of family in Florida, etc., grew up going to Disney World and walking down Main Street, USA, and Tom Sawyer's Island, and seeing these recreations of Walt Disney's boyhood, essentially.
Right. Who was from Missouri.
Very much, Marceline. And something that has really struck me, because of course to their credit, even back in the 50s, the Disney quote unquote Imagineers really did their homework when they started creating things to give an experience of whatever it was that they were giving an experience of in the various lands, etc. And something that has come back to me over and over in many of our locations, many of the places that I've had the opportunity to go into, is walk into a location and go, this is the real one.
Yeah.
And Kendrick House does that for me. And Ritchie Mansion in Newtonia does that for me. It's that era. It is that construction. And what to me at this point, certainly as an adult, is really, really exciting is the fact that you're not going to go like around the back and find a giant steel building and a parking lot. It's a 360-degree experience. Love that.
No, not casting aspersions at any tourist destination in Missouri, but there we go.
No,
that disclaimer said.
And some of our tourism locations, because Missouri is very much a tourism state as well. A number of our tourism locations have really interesting long-standing histories and hauntings.
Yeah, they do.
I'll just leave that there.
Yeah.
So come out to the Ritchie Mansion, visit with us, be a part of what's going to be a great night in late April of 2022.
May 23rd. And shout out to Always Buying Books in Joplin.
Yes.
Sponsoring the video cast for reading. Actually, I get a lot of research material there. And and they do a great job. They have such a varied selection from, your genre reading, sci-fi, mystery, etc., to high-end collectibles that if you can't find something that you like there's something wrong with you.
Well, there's, for me, there's a number of things. I'm just excited and honored to have Always Buying Books as a Dark Ozarks sponsor. It is so perfectly appropriate based on not only our research, but just who we are as people. And I've rarely met a bookstore that I wasn't excited about. Books have been an integral part of my life for nearly as long as I can remember. And it's also a great stop if you happen to be passing through Joplin, or more specifically on a Route 66 tour. Yeah,
because it's, you're going down Route 66 stop, and Bob and Elise do a wonderful job and helping customers, and they're always a joy, and you never know what they're going to do. So
makes it even more fun. And
by our post, you get a flavor of that. So
you can also follow online.
The website alwaysbuyingbooks.com, as well as on Facebook, and specials and unique items often they will put even in their Facebook posts, so that you can contact them to purchase. So even if you're not here locally, you can still enjoy that.
Absolutely. I'm personally looking forward to buying another bookcase, which will happen within this quarter, and probably showing up with a decent amount of cash in my pocket and the anticipation of bolstering my general collection of esoterica and the occult. A heads up to everybody who knows me.
There you go.
That's my disclaimer to everybody who has to deal with me.
Well, if they know me, it's pretty much the same disclosure.
Yeah. And that's what makes Dark Ozarks fun. Of course, also visit the Dark Ozarks YouTube channel.
That's right. Yes. Go check us out on YouTube. Just search Dark Ozarks and you'll find us. And there's some stuff over there that's not on Facebook. And of course, you can always bookmark it and go back anytime. A lot of people prefer YouTube for videos anyway. So
I'm on there all the time. And of course, we record these lives on Facebook and then are now uploading them on YouTube. So if you're watching this on YouTube saying, why are you telling us to go to YouTube? This video was originally recorded live on Facebook.
that's right.
It is a tangled but fun web. And so if you're watching us on Facebook, be sure, if you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to follow us on Facebook and like Dark Ozarks on Facebook.
That's right. You have a little deja vu.
Oh, I'm so confused at this point.
Me too. I normally am by Wednesday.
I think the fact that we film on Wednesdays and we have 3 days of our respective work weeks under our belt at this point adds a certain I don't know if flair for the dramatic is the right word, but a certain something
Yes.
to our recordings.
I'll go with that.
It'd be very different if it was on Monday night. We'd just be cranky.
Yeah. And with that, I guess UFOs.
Absolutely. Cranky UFOs.
Speaking of
and Mothman.
that's another subject. Another day.
Yes, it is. And another action figure, which I'm looking forward to getting. Continuing on UFOs. Missouri and Arkansas, while not at the top of UFO report, UFO sighting reported by state, are still pretty doggone high and much higher than a lot of people realize.
Yeah, I think 12 and 14 or something like that.
Mm-hmm. It's and some of the reports in question are considered to be quite significant in the general pantheon of what has contributed to what we know, as well as contributed to many unanswered questions to this day about UFOs.
Very much so. Almost from the beginning, and I think it's interesting because you can usually people date the modern UFO phenomena from 1947 and the sighting by Kenneth Allen up in Washington near Mount Rainier, I believe.
I believe you're right.
But actually, there are sightings that go back thousands of years, hundreds of years around the world. But there's this curious little blip in 1897 of airships or presumed airships that of sightings from California all the way to the Midwest through Nebraska and Kansas and Arkansas and Illinois, etc. And that no one can really, no one has put their finger on verifying, yes, they were airships or not. But the interesting thing there is no one seemed to assume that there was anything extraterrestrial involved.
No. It's there seems to be a couple of points in play to me. One is that the reports are in many cases appear very grounded within a sense of reality, that these are machines of a sort,
and a few actually with seen human pilots.
Yes, and in the case of the 1897, April of 1890, I do find this interesting. Several of our UFO encounters or unidentified flying object encounters in the Ozarks or near Ozarks or boundary lands of the Ozarks happen in late April. So we're like right on the anniversary practically of these things.
That's true, and certainly and over a wide span of time.
Yes. And
not sure what it is about April, but
I don't know. the the airship reports are under this umbrella because they are obviously being reported as unidentified or unknown flying objects,
Mhm.
a very different sort, but clearly something that appears to have impacted the Ozarks in both states.
Yes, and people might say, well, they were just airships or balloons or whatever, but their description is much more like dirigibles.
Yes.
But dirigibles technically had not been invented yet.
It is so very interesting. I there to me there is a very mm, Jules Verne quality to this entire narrative,
That's true. That is true.
and
And and you could chalk it up to that. I mean, you could chalk it up to imagination and people, even maybe seeing newspaper reports from farther west, and then, suddenly, oh, I saw this. But
Mhm.
some of the witnesses were very credible. Some were law enforcement, and some
Yes,
submitted to affidavits, uh, even though it caused them consternation in the
yes,
community. Um, and and in that regard, that was very similar to more modern witnesses of UFO phenomena.
yes.
They were, they're subjected to credibility being questioned, etc. And
Right.
so there is a parallel there.
Yes. Something else that I can't help but mm, draw some connections to. We're talking about 1897, and
Hmm.
to me, this sort of the period between 1892 and 1904 is very interesting to me in terms of sort of the Midwest or Middle America
Hmm.
technology and the attentions of the global stage. And my dates for that is actually 1894. It's supposed to be in 1892. The was the Columbia Exposition, the Great White City of Chicago,
Yep.
which was an extraordinary phenomena of technology.
Hmm.
And then forward to 1904 with the St. Louis World's Fair
Interesting. Yes.
and subsequent or accompanying uh, accompanying Olympics, even though I think the IOC may still not have accepted the 1904 games for a variety of delightful reasons, which we won't get into here. I do love the 1904 games because they gave us waffle cones.
That they did. That they did.
and and I think maybe waffle fries. So there was a whole waffle theme, if that's the case. And, and I'm good with that. I'm very good with that. So, but what it to me represents is a short span of years. Depending on your when you want to start counting, uh, approximately a dozen years total in covering this space, in which you really see an interesting collision of sorts of a very mm, rural and 19th century America suddenly becoming engaged with, exposed to, in some cases, colliding with uh, the the cutting edge of the Industrial Revolution.
I mean, that's a fair point. And there's an example of that. Another example, actually, that we've talked about before, actually out of Granby, Missouri, of of the wheelbarrow, because Granby was the earliest mining town in Southwest Missouri, and his sons actually walked with this wheelbarrow to St. Louis for the World's Fair. And it was exhibited there. And then through various subterfuge, the wheelbarrow was stolen, hidden away, absconded with, and then like 100 years later returned.
It's back.
So that very much is a story of sort of rural Ozarks clapping with modernity.
It is. And for individuals who may not have studied the Columbia Exposition, the technology that was on display in the early 1890s was of an extraordinary sort. Things that obviously that we take for granted now, but in many cases, technology that would not become widespread in much of the rest of rural Middle America until, in some cases, 50 to 70 years later.
Yeah. I mean, that's very true.
You know, to me, it's amazing that, you know, I mean, they called it the Great White City for the fact that it was lit with millions of electric lights.
Yeah.
Powered by Tesla. And a pre-elephant Edison. And
yeah,
there was that elephant.
And most people probably don't know that story. So
yeah, you guys can Google it and be horrified.
Yeah. If you want to see how ruthless the competition for control of electricity was, Google Edison and what he did to an elephant.
Oh, yeah, I still get shivers about that, in all fairness. And so you have, you know, in the early 1890s, you have this essentially a World's Fair, I'm gonna go back to my Disney roots, an Epcot Center, a theme park.
Very much so.
That is, you know, lit up every night with millions of electric lights. And in the rural Ozarks, backwoods rural Ozarks, still folks living in the 1960s and in some cases in the 1970s without a lot of electrical access in some locations, and in many cases, you know, in some cases, no running water. That, to me, you know, stretching it, but saying, you know, that in some instances that this technology took 80 years to arrive. So very interesting collisions. Of course, this is, especially down here, not that far from the sentiments and the trauma of the Civil War.
It was very much still real for a large segment of Ozarks.
And and a big part of these grand exhibitions, certainly in the case of both Chicago and St. Louis, Chicago certainly pretty much setting the flag that Chicago was an international city. It was a city of importance on the global stage, not just a regional stage or a national stage. There's a lot of commentary that really states, and yet again, comparatively speaking, not that far away, very regional, very rural, and in some cases scarcely removed from the Civil War or even pre-Civil War. So it is, to me, it is not unreasonable to think that individuals with the means, with the funds, and a penchant for Jules Verne literature, managed to construct a covey of airships and not bother to tell the press.
That's true. Or it could have been the Army too. I mean,
yes.
Dirigibles, I believe, were publicly introduced by the U.S. Army in, I think, 1904 or 5.
Okay.
So just shortly after the Wright brothers flight.
Yeah.
And so they certainly probably were under development. So perhaps it was, what we would now call a black budget project.
Yes. And from the reports, whatever it was, whatever they were, seemed to be moving west to east.
Yes, yes. And some accounts were that there was a public demonstration actually at Nashville or Memphis, I forget which now, supposedly by a professor Bernard, although there's not much information other than people saying, yes, I saw this. So again, maybe it was the guy, I mean, maybe it was the Army, who knows? But certainly enough that it certainly happened, and people certainly, some people were rather excited, emotional about it, of what is this? Others were criticized and called fools for saying they saw this. And those sort of accounts did happen more in more rural areas that, question their credibility.
Yes. I think it's, to me, it's a fascinating element of the tapestry of our history. And the fact that these reports did make it into newspaper articles of the immediate region.
Mm-hmm. And a large number of these accounts. So it just wasn't something isolated. So
Yes. So Victorian dirigibles in the skies over the Ozarks.
who knew?
It is interesting. I like the story because it's a UFO without all of the emotional baggage of extraterrestrials.
I do too, but yet still some of the same drama.
Right. And some of the same dynamics, which I think really speaks to the fact that communities and societies, sort of the sociocultural response, largely remains unchanged.
Yeah.
In response to the dynamic.
I think so, but I think that's a good preface for then what came in the 40s.
Yes. Oh, 1941. Also, that let's see here, late April 1941.
Yes. There does seem to be a corollary to April and a lot of these events in the Ozarks for some reason.
And we don't know why. And then, of course, we're moving up to the boundary areas of the Ozarks, the Missouri Ozarks, on our eastern border at Cape Girardeau. And Cape Girardeau, for individuals who don't know, is there on the Mississippi River. It's a old port town, and long-standing history, because of its location, is technically within the river delta, or the beginning of the river delta, of the grand Mississippi River. And so lots and lots of intersections of history and intersections of industry and technology, that's all coming together there. Fascinating location. Had the opportunity to just be there a couple of weeks ago, which was awesome. And also a great music scene, which was something that I did not realize. And for our geographical purists who say that's in the river valley and it's no longer part of the Ozarks, it is part of our boundaries and border regions, because say just 35 miles as the crow flies to the west, for example, is Marble Hill, which is decidedly within the Ozarks. And you can, I love the edges of the Ozarks in relationship to the Mississippi and the Arkansas River valleys, because you can genuinely see there's the Ozarks.
Yeah. And granted, culturally, it is it is very fluid, and there's just not a line drawn in the sand and saying, okay, culturally we have nothing in common now.
No, you can't. And I love to see those sort of sociocultural and historical and cultural crossroads, which crossroads are also very significant, crossroads into the region. And so we get to Cape Girardeau, late April 1941, and it's almost a classic Roswell UFO crash, with all of the moving parts, including the alleged elements, including the questionable elements, and then including stuff that you're really just sitting there going, clearly everything is pointing to the fact that something happened here and it was weird.
Yeah, you are left with a sense that something happened, it was weird, but exactly, making a conclusion as to exactly what is a little harder. But really, looking back after Roswell, it really does mirror what happened. And basically there was a crash of initially what was assumed to be a military plane near the airport, and they go out, and allegedly law enforcement finds that does not seem to be any aircraft that they are familiar with, and that they call the Army. And then they find at least one pilot that is very injured, but still alive initially. And they call a minister out to basically give last rites.
Yes.
And so.
And boy, is he in for a surprise.
Yes, it's not what he was anticipating. And so basically the main characters in this are the sheriff and the minister and newspaper photographer.
Yes.
Who is on site, and who all say that there was a pilot that was not human.
Yes.
And then it gets a little weird.
It does. Certainly the minister being Reverend William Huffman of Red Star Baptist Church in Cape Girardeau, being called, and then finding the situation that he is praying over these essentially a dying gray alien.
Yes, what we would now say is a gray alien.
Yes. This is 1941, and something that I think is an interesting layer to this, and we are speaking into this topic after the 1947 Roswell incident, after a number of observable incidents that have been reported through the 60s and 70s. Or 50s and 60s, and 70s. We're talking about this after countless B sci-fi movies. We're talking about this post Close Encounters of the Third Kind, post Independence Day, post X-Files. We have a structural lexicon
that was not existent at the time. And so and that's sort of the surreal thing, is because looking back at this incident that took place before this was on anyone's radar, it fits those pop culture ideas and as you said, lexicon almost to a T, which is that's almost too good to be true, but
it does. And the yin and yang of this, the skepticism versus believer aspect, certainly the easy out for skeptics is to say that a handful of people post Roswell, post all of these other things, just decided one day that they'd say that they had an experience as well.
Right.
And which, is not unfair. The the elements to me that are that make this interesting is that very few, if any, of the individuals associated with this 1941 occurrence seem to have been interested in capitalizing upon this.
Right. Even the photographer who took a photo, apparently.
Yes. And to me, certainly with the information that we have at hand, this strikes me as a very appropriate response by rural Missourians in 1941 with no point of reference.
Right.
That a thing happened.
Mm-hmm.
We have no vocabulary to describe the thing and no means or methodology or open door to deal with that, if we were even to want to. But then years later, at some point, a few of these, including the Reverend Huffman,
Mm-hmm.
then at one point tells his children.
Right. And the sheriff tells his brother.
Mm-hmm.
So, but again, none of it in a way to sort of quote cash in or create celebrity. So,
No.
although, after the fact, it seems to have been inflated at, once eventually this came out, particularly when you get to about the 80s. And then you have versions, after the Army showed up, then Harry Truman showed up, who was senator at the time, just shortly before he became vice president. Of course, there's nothing that anyone can point to indicate that Truman was in Missouri at the time period. But certainly it makes a good story, and if it it happened, okay. But I tend to doubt that, because if they were going to bring someone in to see the scene, I don't see it being a senator. So
it seems unlikely. And so, to me, at this juncture point with the information that we have, do I think that something happened on that April night, 1941, near Cape Girardeau? Yes, I do.
Yeah, I think definitely something happened. Exactly what, I'm not sure. But no, but I'm not going to dismiss it out of hand either. So
no, in the case of currently, and again, I'm prefacing this with the information that we have at this point,
right,
with what it seems that Reverend Huffman stated years later in regards to what the sheriff told his brother. I think, based on sort of the lack of any capacity to ground this type of experience within an understandable reality,
mm-hmm.
that I, at this point, lean heavily toward believing their account.
I do too. I do too. And I don't rule out the possibility that this was an extraterrestrial. I don't jump to that conclusion lightly, and in fact, in my own experience, as you know, I don't jump to that conclusion.
Right.
And tend to really tend to veer away from that. But on the other hand, I can't explain the technology that I witnessed. So
Right. So to me, it is just, it's fascinating. Um, and I think for me, something that I am always interested in delving into almost as much as the reported phenomena is just the sociocultural responses that essentially we are forced to have when presented with this type of information.
yeah. Oh, me too. Definitely from the psychological and sociological aspects. I think, to be perfectly honest, those are as significant or more significant than the empirical truth until the smoking gun is actually found.
Yes, yes. Yeah. And of course there's a reasonable amount of conjecture and debate over the fact that the smoking gun was released, um, hidden amongst tens of thousands of pages of government documents, and oh, by the way, they were redacted and you can't actually read them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but the tantalizing hints that are in that information dump from last year do make you wonder.
It does. It really does. And the now, I don't know if we want to make a gentle or a hard shift, but in terms of modern UFO analysis, ufologists, researchers, experiencers, and simply those who are interested, there is a line of crossover. Yes, I'm going there. You can throw something at me when we're at the Richie Mansion.
Okay.
There is a line of crossover between cryptid sightings, cryptid lore, over to UFOs, and
Yeah, there does tend to be a correlation.
there's there's or at least a correlation within sociocultural groups.
Yeah.
And to a certain degree, I also postulate that some of the crossover exists because individuals who have had cryptid experiences are socially and culturally dealing with the same issues of the larger the sort of the mainstream narrative. They're now at odds with the mainstream narrative.
Yeah,
And
that's true, and that's fair. So they are kind of kindred spirits in that regard.
often against their will.
Yes, and there does seem to be, at least in certain instances, a a clustering of cryptid sightings around a UFO sighting in the same area. Yeah. And there are various theories for that, and my answer is not always appreciated in UFO circles, but my answer there is usually that, well, if there is a large primate in the mountains of the Ozarks or the swamps of Florida or wherever, and there's something in the sky that we notice and look up, that they probably do too. And it's likely to bring them out or where they're encountered.
And running with that hypothesis, and just landing upon essentially the Bigfoot phenomena in general. If Bigfoot is real and they have managed to remain unseen,
Mm-hmm.
the the first thing that has to be taken into account is that they have to be incredibly intelligent.
Yes, yes. Well, and of course, I think that is, one of those unspoken, well, not actually unspoken, but one of those assumptions is if they are a higher primate, that they are fairly assumed to have higher intelligence for the animal kingdom. And if we aren't indulging our human ego, it could certainly be on par with ours.
Yes. Or in certainly some of the experiences of, coming back to individuals who have experienced some form of interaction.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that seems quite consistent is that the individuals get the sense that they, first of all, are in the presence of a highly intelligent but different kind of intelligent being.
Yes, highly intelligent but not human. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and something that seems to come along with that is a sense of deep unsettling.
Yes. Well, I mean, and I think you can extrapolate to, in a broader sense of that just being typical of the other experience of encountering the other, whatever the other may be in a particular instance.
Yes. The thing that I find interesting, just as a point of conjecture, and this is again, and I have not had a Bigfoot experience.
Mm-hmm. I have not had one directly. I've investigated and seen some interesting evidence, but I've had I've had a couple of experiences where I know something was there, but I can't say for sure what it was.
Yes, and we have had the opportunity to have a number of credible leads,
mm-hmm.
and discuss at length with individuals who have had a variety of experiences. Mm-hmm. and these are not, obviously, in our position, it is not our place to say yes or no. It's not our, that's not for us to make that call. But I think we're both comfortable in saying that many, not all of the reports, not all of the conversations that we've had, but many are coming from individuals that have given us no reason, while we can't say what a particular experience was, we have not had any reason to doubt that an experience occurred.
Very true. And some of the people and some of these witnesses are, highly credible professionals, law enforcement, other professionals, people, that again, it goes back to the airship situation, that by stating their experiences, they could have their credibility called into question and affect their reputation and likely their livelihood. And I have been willing to do so.
Yes. So there are, of course, lots of unanswered questions in regards to all of this. But an area that I'm just interested in, diving into a bit of a discussion on. I don't know if we've really gone down this particular rabbit hole, but a number of individuals who have experienced this, again, coming back to the sense of almost a wrongness or a difference, a presence of knowing. In some cases, people have translated that as a sense of telepathy, which
yes.
And what I think is interesting, of course, we quite regularly kick over the hornet's nest in regards to black panthers in the Ozarks, and that's a thing. But in any of the points of experiencers that I've talked to or read or heard in regards to black panthers, unsettling because this is a large apex predator, and that this is a large apex predator out of place. but not a sense of wrongness
No.
other than it's a big cat.
Right. I mean, there's even accounts, different places of lions being witnessed in places that they couldn't have been, walking down the street and then disappearing and
Yeah.
things like that. And even
Yes.
those bizarre encounters cluster did happen in several different places on the same day. People still didn't have that sense of wrongness. It just this doesn't go here, and
Right.
yeah,
In the sense that, if you were looking through your child's picture book of animals in North America, and suddenly you find one from South America in your North America page, that
yeah,
that sense, obviously it engenders a lot of intense feelings and debate amongst a variety of communities, but not that sense of many of the reports, not all, but many of the Bigfoot reports, of saying something changed about the environment, or I sensed something, or I felt that it was communicating with me without words, or these types of things. And what is odd and also unsettling, perhaps completely separate, perhaps not, is that a number of extraterrestrial, or in some cases UFO experiencers report the same thing. In one case, which was local, recorded it, a young man who was camping looks out across the mountains and sees a craft near one of the mountains, and is instantly filled with a sense of extreme unease, and the sense that it is aware of him. And obviously this is very different than looking out across a mountain and saying, wow, that's the funniest looking airplane I've ever seen, because I don't look at airplanes and think that they're aware of me.
That's true. I mean, that's true. And I guess my only 2 cents for that, from my own experience, is that I do, whatever I witnessed did seem to be aware of me, because it stopped, it hovered above the road in front of my car. But even then I did not get that type of sense. I got the sense of, they saw my car, whatever this is, saw my car, it hovered in place. But yeah, I didn't get that kind of feeling, no.
Yeah. And I think something that is really important to take into consideration with the ongoing conversations and ongoing debates in regards to large scale cryptids, in regards to unidentified flying objects, is that we have a natural tendency to want to put everything into a single category, and
We love boxes.
We do, and boy howdy do we. And realistically, there may be not just a handful of boxes, but lots and lots of different phenomena that is being observed, that is being experienced in a lot of different ways. And
but you have the factor that no matter how many boxes there are, it all is filtered through perception.
it is, which certainly adds a very odd wrinkle to the entire thing. And it's, some of this is a bit de rigueur of the just the community discussion at large, but issues of cross dimension as opposed to interstellar. As much as I really What's that?
Time travel.
Time travel, yes. Ironically, when it comes to cryptids that are there and then aren't, I'm actually a lot more, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but a lot more comfortable with the the discussion points of sacred sites, conjurings, and and essentially ancient portals than I am necessarily with the concept of you know Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull.
Fair, I agree. Yeah, I agree. Well, and for those that may be going, whoa, what kind of right turn did you just take there? When you think about it, that is thousands of years of received practice and belief systems around the world, and we're not just saying, oh, that was Europe, or that was North America, or that was Asia. Those are belief systems that are shared around the world for thousands of years. So either everyone totally blew it and believed in the same thing, irrationally for thousands and thousands of years, or there's something to it, even if we can't quantify it in empirical terms.
Yes, I think that it is an area that I think is important to tread respectfully.
I agree. Just please don't tell me that Bigfoot is E.T.'s pet, okay?
I won't.
Okay, fair. That's fair.
I do like the idea. I will call. I'm continuing. I like the idea that thinking of of these things as collections of diverse phenomena, that our perception tends to try to group together.
Yeah, and yeah, I agree there.
It's lots and lots of moving parts. This might be I want there's a whole bunch of other areas on this that I want to jump into. But I think this might be just a good place to conclude on these two sort of crossover topics, and then pick it up next week.
Well, we're gonna have to talk a little longer.
What's that?
We're gonna have to talk a little longer.
Oh, we do? Okay.
We do. We lost our producer, so.
Oh, okay. Well, we can do that. The Bray Road Dog Band was really for me the point that I really started, conjecturing in terms of this point of conjuring. To me, that was really, really interesting. I think that in jumping over to UFOs, I think that the simple fact that U.S. military and other military is utilizing technology that we do not comprehend is just, I think at this point we can just say, yeah, it's happening.
Well, I mean, we know for certain that lead time for research is 40 to 50 years beyond what, we are aware of capabilities. And it has been that way basically since, shortly after the Second World War. So
Yes.
that certainly is a possibility. And candidly, they have explored a lot of topics that are less empirical. I mean, they've researched ESP, they've researched shamanism, actually, in incorporating it in soldier training. or
Wow.
special forces. So, I mean, there are, and those are things that we know of that are not classified anymore. So who knows?
Right.
And, you know, I mean, if you go back and talk about things like the Philadelphia experiment and things like that, I mean, they were experimenting with the idea of time travel and basically teleportation, you know, in the 40s. So
Right.
it's easy for everyone to say, ha ha, that's Star Trek, but
Is it? And I think that there's the thing that, you know, that comes along with this that I find fascinating in the sense of just tech, but unknown tech.
yeah.
That
And what I find interesting about it is that you run into the same societal pressures as experiencers of UFO phenomena or cryptids.
yeah,
You know, when people bring up those topics, they suddenly, oh, they're the crackpot, you know,
right.
because we tend to, again, we are comfortable in our little box, and the box is what we are existing in a three-dimensional world today. You know,
Yes.
our everyday life is supposed to be the most advanced that there is.
Yes. Yes. And so okay, so now that there's a variety of ideas. We'll see if my brain can stay focused long enough tonight to make these happen. One, and this is why I do not like movie critic moment. This is one of the reasons I do not like Indiana Jones and the Legend of the Crystal Skull, or whatever the heck it's called. Um,
It's problematic at best.
that thing that happened that had Shia LaBeouf in it. Is because they're there's a lot about the concept of interdimensional beings in ancient societies and highly sophisticated ancient societies and this sort of thing that have a lot of appeal to me. So on paper, you would think that there's everything that I would like about this. The thing that I think that is very questionable for us, and I'm not just talking about the film, but I'm talking about our interaction, sort of our pompous interaction with pop culture, is the idea that thousands of years of essentially highly advanced thinkers, I'm going to say thinkers, not highly advanced industrially, but highly advanced thinkers in terms of individuals who potentially understood higher planes, understood shamanism, understood really how the mind, the body, and the soul, and all of these things could interact, and individuals who created really impressive and sophisticated societies and religious structures, etc., over eons of time. That there's this huge gap of these people who get clumped into the primitive people.
Yeah.
And then somehow behind them is some sort of extraterrestrial, interdimensional, highly sophisticated being. And it's not until we, and like 2001 or 1999 or, you know, whenever, with, you know, via our everyman of, you know, every man, modern every man of Indiana Jones or whomever comes along and goes, oh, I get it, I solved the mystery, and we've suddenly jumped the gap between, you know, however many millennia ago when the highly advanced civilization arrived. Interestingly enough, they can speak English, and yay, we've solved the mystery, and the flying saucer disappears. That's my, you know, also there were computer generated monkeys, and that was weird, but Uh, that and a very Russian Kate Blanchett. That I'm going, Galadriel, what happened to you? That that I think is really a really wrong way of a really bad perspective to have, because it says that we at this moment with our, Coca-Cola and atomic bombs are somehow at the pinnacle of understanding humanity, and all the indicators are that the quote unquote primitive shamans of the past, say, like 5 to 8,000 years had it figured out better about what these types of phenomena are, who we are as human beings or whatever within this sort of grander celestial realm. And we're ignoring that information.
Exactly. And I think, okay, even taking the problematic movie, we used to look at those things and say, okay, that's a movie, that's interesting, that was, a 2-hour diversion.
Yes.
And then somewhere along the lines, in pop culture and certain networks and TV shows can be named, but we decided that, okay, nice entertainment is now somehow credible theory.
Yes, I agree.
That is actually the huge leap that was made. And it was done in a blink of an eye.
Yes.
It was like, well, wait a minute, what happened there?
Life.
And suddenly everyone forgot, oh, this is entertainment. And, aside that happened with news and everything else in the world, it's just like suddenly facts turned into entertainment and opinion, and masquerade as facts back and forth. And you can blame it on you can complain about it on the news, you can complain about it in this kind of entertainment and a lot of others as well. It's a phase that we are going through that doesn't make any sense.
It is. I very much agree. And I find it interesting but inescapable, in the sense that, and we referenced this back with the Cape Girardeau incident. The individuals who experienced whatever it was that they experienced did not have a contextual lexicon to communicate what it was they experienced.
Exactly.
And while you could argue that, well, why didn't they just tell somebody in 1941 that it happened? The idea that they literally did not have a vocabulary to tell it.
Right. I mean, and an interesting thing too, one thing that came to mind a while ago was that in relation to Cape Girardeau, this was, it was about 3 years after the infamous War of the Worlds broadcast.
Yes.
But what they described was not anything like the spaceships or aliens portrayed in War of the Worlds, either through the book, which had been around for quite a while at that point, a long time for that point, or the melodrama itself. So you can't even say that you can blame that, they associated it with that, because again, I think particularly after people realized, oh, that broadcast was not real and it wasn't real time broadcast here, by the time the hoopla was sort of advertised, it was over with, and a lot of America went, man, those people on the East Coast were crazy.
Yeah.
And so so from that perspective, they may have been saying like, oh, well, I can't explain it, it doesn't make any sense, but it happened, and why make a big deal out of it?
Yes, which is a very Missourian kind of thing.
It is. And we also have to remember that this was a time when, the Army showed up and, by all accounts, the Army showed up and cleaned up the wreck and said, we'll take care of it. And people would go, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was.
They know what they're doing, and we don't live in that same perspective. And most people alive today can't imagine living in that perspective.
No. And even as we're discussing this, I'm becoming somewhat contextually more aware of what a child of pop culture that I am, because I really can't describe anything without referencing, which I am about to do. And
Boy.
I know, and go straight down the rabbit hole in this, but it's occasionally what we do. So 1979, Star Trek the Motion Picture.
Okay.
With a scene that, even though I was watching it 10 years later on VHS tape, stuck in my 11-year-old head and would not go away, and that is the transporter accident. As an adult, I realized that the only reason it was written in was to add some interest, and because we don't have Spock and we need Spock.
Yeah.
And so you have to get rid of your science officer before the ship leaves space dock. And so let's give ourselves a transporter accident. I think of everything that has happened that I've watched on Star Trek, that one still bothers me the most, and you don't actually see it happen.
Well, but of course that's how the mind works, is that, if you just reveal it as a a slasher movie, it's much harder to take serious than letting the mind invent what happened off screen.
Yes. And I am going somewhere with this in regards to the Cape Girardeau incident.
Okay.
And also the Philadelphia. What's that?
I assumed you were.
Yeah. And also the Philadelphia experiment. Okay. And I have no idea, full disclaimer, I have no idea what I'm talking about. This is just something that's been in the back of my head for a long time. And okay. Now's it's good as time as any to share. That, and for people who don't know, who have not seen Star Trek the Motion Picture, I'm going to receive hate mail for this. It is one of my favorite Star Trek films. It really is. And they start the transport. They start to form. The transporter loses power. You see sort of a shadow humanoid image, and then there is this echoey scream, and then the pad fades out.
Yeah.
And then there is a voice from the corresponding pad back on Earth that says, Enterprise, what we got back didn't live long.
Yeah.
Fortunately.
Yeah, it's a great line.
Yeah, oh my gosh. 11-year-old me just kind of had a perpetual nightmare for like 6 months in regards to that. And now coming back to the concept of, we 1941, of course, we have the United States drops the atomic bombs in 1945. Mm-hmm. We're dealing with clearly a military industrial complex that is dealing with physics that is beyond the realm of normal physics for human conception. and for what the normal human mind conceives.
Right.
And not much later, we're starting to get the admittedly shrouded in in alleged elements of the experiment with a Navy cruiser.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. I just watched one of the documentaries. Were they simply experimenting with making a ship invisible to radar, or invisible, trying to mask it from sonar, to make it difficult to torpedo, or were they, which is of course the somewhat more juicy side of the story, were they using some sort of interdimensional technology to try to phase it out of this dimension?
Mm-hmm.
And then with the corresponding horror stories, which I'm sure were picked up in a certain episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, that I remember the crew member that was stuck between decks, because the ship was moving in and out of various portions of the ship were moving into other dimensions.
It was all played with on the X-Files too, in a couple of episodes.
Very creepy. I think X-Files did it the most creepy, but that's a matter of course. But the idea of the ship disappearing, reappearing, coming back on board, and encountering some really, really horrible things.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's where Josh goes straight down the rabbit hole.
Where I have no idea where he's going. So
this is just something that's been in the back of my mind. Our reports of gray aliens,
mm-hmm.
they are strangely humanoid.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that experimentation of craft that is phasing in and out,
Mm-hmm.
that in these particular cases, potentially with Cape Girardeau, with Roswell, etc., that at the point of coming back from wherever it is that they went,
Mm-hmm.
what we got back isn't living very long either, but that they are actually human.
I mean, I haven't heard it put quite that way, but it makes as much sense as the other theories.
I blame Star Trek the motion picture. Star Trek is my contextual lexicon. But I've that has been something that's been cycling in the back of my head, going, especially the calling individuals to administer last rites, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Basically treating these quote unquote aliens as, essentially, as
like, did they know something that, did they have their dog tags or what? Bob Smith.
Oh.
You may have just created a new conspiracy theory. I don't know.
I'm good with that. I do what I can. It's a simple life.
Okay, there we go. This is what I get to deal with, people.
I am not going to try to use that to explain telepathic Bigfoot.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I would have heard something that you said.
As you should.
Okay, well,
Are we back?
Oh, there you are. There you are. You froze on my end for a minute.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a reason for that.
Yeah, I think so. I do not blame Zoom for doing that to me post theory.
There you go. Well,
Oh,
that might be a good place to end and
yes.
leave food for thought.
Go watch Star Trek the Motion Picture, folks. Then you can have nightmares about transporters just like I did.
Oh boy. So we will be back next Wednesday, and I have
Yes.
no idea what we're talking about yet.
I don't either, but please visit us at the Ritchie Mansion on Saturday.
Yes, please do. Follow us over on YouTube as well, and we appreciate y'all, and have a good week.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Alex.
Thanks. Thanks, Josh. Thanks, Alex.